Welcome to Calm Mind English. Maybe today asked more from you than you had to give. Maybe you kept going because you had no other choice, and only now, in the quiet, you can finally feel how heavy it really was. Some days do not fall apart in a dramatic way. They simply press on you little by little, until even small things feel harder than they should. You answer people. You finish what you can. You move from one task to the next. And from the outside, it may look like a normal day. But inside, something feels slow. Your thoughts feel crowded. Your body feels like it has been carrying weight for hours without setting it down. This kind of tiredness is not always easy to explain. It is not only sleepiness. It is not only stress. It is the feeling of being full of effort. Maybe you had to stay patient when you were already worn out. Maybe you had to keep smiling when your mind wanted silence. Maybe you had to continue even after your energy was already gone. That kind of effort leaves a quiet mark. It follows you into the evening. It stays with you when the room gets dark and the noise of the day finally stops. And when the noise stops, the truth becomes easier to hear. You may notice how tense your face has been, how tight your shoulders still are, how your heart has been trying to carry too much at once. Tonight, there is nothing you need to prove. You do not need to make this day sound meaningful. You do not need to turn your pain into a lesson right away. Sometimes a hard day is simply a hard day. That is enough truth for one night. There are people who look calm all day and still feel deeply tired by bedtime. There are people who get everything done and still go to sleep with sadness sitting quietly in the chest. Effort and heaviness can exist together. Functioning and hurting can happen in the same person at the same time. So if you made it through today, even in a messy way, that still matters. Not because you did it perfectly, but because you kept moving while carrying something invisible. Maybe no one noticed how much inner work this day required from you. Maybe no one saw how many times you adjusted yourself just to stay steady. But your mind felt it. Your body felt it. And now, lying here, you can feel the cost of it more clearly. This is why nighttime can feel honest. During the day, there are distractions, messages, plans, noise, small duties that keep your mind pointed outward. At night, there is more space. And in that space, what was hidden starts to rise. You may notice disappointment that you pushed aside earlier. You may notice the emotional weight of a conversation that seemed small at the time. You may notice how long you have been asking yourself to hold on without real rest. That does not mean you are weak. It means you are human, and the day was real. There is something gentle about letting yourself admit that. Not collapsing into despair. Not building a dramatic story. Just speaking the truth quietly. Today was heavy. Those 4 words can hold a lot. They can hold the pressure, the tiredness, the silent frustration, the effort nobody measured. And still, even inside that truth, there can be a small opening. Not a loud promise. Not forced positivity. Not the pressure to believe that everything will suddenly become easy. Just a calm idea. This day was heavy, but it is not the whole story. Tonight is not asking you to solve your life. It is only asking you to rest inside this moment and let the day come to an end. You do not need to carry every unfinished thought into tomorrow. You do not need to keep replaying everything as if your mind must stay on duty through the night. There is dignity in stopping. There is wisdom in letting the body go still. There is strength in allowing the day to be over. Many people think hope has to sound bright and confident. But some of the most honest hope is quiet. It sounds like this. Maybe tomorrow will not feel exactly like today. Maybe the same problems will still exist, but your heart will meet them differently. Maybe your mind will wake with a little more space. Maybe one small part of the day will feel lighter. That is enough for tonight. Hope does not always arrive as a big feeling. Sometimes it arrives as permission to believe that the next morning does not need to repeat this one exactly. The mind often forgets that pain changes shape. A difficult mood can make everything feel permanent. It can make one evening feel like a prediction. But one evening is not a prophecy. One tired night does not define the whole week. One heavy day does not decide who you are becoming. Life moves in quieter ways than we often notice. Energy shifts. Thoughts soften. The body recovers in small hidden stages. Even while you sleep, something inside you keeps working gently in your favor. You do not need to force that process. You do not need to earn it. You are allowed to lie here and let rest do what effort cannot do anymore. Maybe you did not say everything you wanted to say today. Maybe you did not handle every moment the way you wish you had. Maybe you left things undone. That happens. It happens to thoughtful people. It happens to tired people. It happens to people who care and simply ran out of space inside themselves. So for now, let this room be simple. Let the bed hold your weight. Let the darkness be quiet around you. You are here. The day is ending. Nothing more is required in this moment. And before sleep comes, hold this one gentle truth close. Today was heavy, but tomorrow is still allowed to be different. When the room gets quiet, the mind often gets louder. During the day, your attention is divided. You answer, decide, react, move, and continue. Even when something hurts, there is usually another task waiting to take its place. But at night, the structure disappears. The conversations are over. The screen goes dark. The world asks less from you, and suddenly your own thoughts step forward. This is why nighttime can make a difficult day feel even heavier. It is not always because the problem grew. It is often because there is finally enough silence for you to hear its echo. A small mistake from earlier can start sounding larger than it really was. A short message can feel colder than it did at noon. A delayed reply can begin to look like rejection. One awkward moment can replay itself as if it deserves a full trial in your mind. Night does this to many people. It stretches things. It removes context. It makes temporary feelings sound permanent. What was one hard moment at 4 in the afternoon can start feeling like proof of something much bigger by 11 at night. This is one reason tired people can become harsh with themselves before sleep. The mind, already worn down, starts making broad conclusions from narrow evidence. It does not say, "That was a hard conversation." It says, "I always say the wrong thing." It does not say, "Today felt messy." It says, "My life is becoming a mess." That shift can happen so quietly that you barely notice it. A single memory becomes a story. A story becomes a belief. And once a belief takes shape in the dark, it can feel more convincing than it should. Imagine someone lying in bed after a normal but draining day. Maybe they forgot one task. Maybe they were less patient than they wanted to be. Maybe they saw someone else's success online while feeling stuck in their own life. None of these moments alone would fully break them. But at night, the mind gathers them together and arranges them as if they all point to one painful conclusion. That conclusion is often not true. It is simply tired. There is a difference between truth and late-night interpretation. Truth is usually more balanced. Interpretation in exhaustion is often extreme. It leaves out context. It ignores effort. It forgets how many things you handled reasonably well. It only shines a light on what feels unresolved. This is why one of the quiet skills of nighttime is learning not to believe every thought just because it arrives in a serious voice. The mind can sound very convincing when the room is dark, but a convincing thought is not always an accurate one. Sometimes what you call clarity at night is actually fatigue wearing the clothes of certainty. You may notice this in simple ways. A problem that feels impossible before sleep can look smaller in the morning. A sentence you took personally at night may seem harmless after breakfast. A decision that felt urgent in bed may not even matter by the next afternoon. This does not mean your feelings are fake. It means they are affected by the hour, by the silence, by the energy left in your system, and by the fact that human beings do not judge life very gently when they are depleted. The night has a way of narrowing vision. When you are tired, it becomes harder to hold complexity. The mind wants fast conclusions. It wants simple explanations. It wants to end uncertainty by calling everything bad, everything hopeless, or everything your fault. But real life is rarely that neat. Most hard days are made of mixed things. Some went well. Some did not. Some people disappointed you. Some moments were decent. Some parts are still unfinished. Some answers are not available yet. Night does not like unfinished things. It wants closure. It wants complete meaning. It wants to settle every emotional question before sleep arrives. And when that does not happen, it starts pushing, replaying, and searching for resolution. That search can make you more awake than the actual problem deserves. You lie there trying to solve tomorrow from inside today's exhaustion. You try to understand people when you are too drained to think clearly. You try to judge your whole direction in life from one tired corner of one dark room. No wonder it feels heavy. The problem is not only the day you had. It is also the time at which you are examining it. Night is not always a fair judge. It is often a magnifier. So when the mind starts telling you that this feeling will last forever, notice what is happening. The day is over. Your system is tired. The room is quiet. The hour is late. Your thoughts are not appearing in a neutral space. They are appearing inside fatigue, solitude, and accumulated pressure. That matters. A hard thought at night may need gentleness more than agreement. It may need distance more than analysis. It may need rest more than an answer. There will be things worth addressing later. Some problems are real. Some conversations matter. Some choices need attention. But not every issue must be solved in bed. Not every painful thought becomes wiser because it arrives after midnight. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to turn one hard day into a permanent identity or a final prediction. You can say, "This feels big tonight," and still know it may feel different tomorrow. You can say, "My mind is replaying this," and still know replay is not revelation. You can say, "This hurts," and still know hurt is not always a forecast. Night has its own language, and that language is often heavier than daylight. Learning this does not remove pain, but it softens the authority of the thoughts that come dressed as final truth. And that softening matters. Because if tonight makes things look larger, then tomorrow may help them return to their real size. There is a quiet mistake many people make after a hard day. They do not only say, "Today was difficult." They begin to say, "Something is wrong with me." This change may sound small, but it changes everything. A difficult day becomes a personal definition. A moment of struggle becomes evidence about who they are. A tired reaction becomes a character flaw, and before they know it, they are no longer describing an experience. They are judging their identity. Maybe you have felt that before. You look at one bad evening and start wondering whether you are falling behind in life. You think about one conversation that went poorly and begin to question your value. You notice how tired you are and treat that tiredness as proof that you are weak, unstable, or not handling life the way other people somehow can. But a hard day is not a complete description of a person. Imagine standing in front of a bathroom mirror before bed. The light is soft. The room is quiet. You are washing your face, and for the first time all day, no one needs anything from you. In moments like that, thoughts often become personal. You do not just remember what happened. You start asking what it says about you. This is where gentleness matters. Because one disappointing day does not mean you are a disappointing person. One messy reaction does not mean you are careless by nature. One unproductive afternoon does not erase the effort you have shown in quieter ways. One emotionally heavy day does not mean you are broken inside. Human beings often confuse state with self. A state is temporary. It changes. It moves. It responds to sleep, pressure, hunger, grief, stress, hormones, environment, memory, noise, loneliness, and rest. The self is deeper than the state passing through it. Tonight, you may be in a state of exhaustion. You may be in a state of emotional strain. You may be in a state of doubt. But that state is not your full identity. It is something you are experiencing, not the whole truth of who you are. This can be hard to believe when emotions feel close. Pain has a way of sounding permanent. It says, this is not just a rough night. This is who you are becoming. But that is often not accurate. Think of a window during rain. When the glass is covered, the outside world looks blurred. Shapes lose their edges. Distances are hard to judge. But the rain on the window is not the shape of the world itself. It is only what is covering your view in that moment. Emotional heaviness can work the same way. It affects how you see yourself. It does not always reveal you clearly. A person can be caring and still have a cold day. A person can be responsible and still forget something. A person can be strong and still feel worn down. A person can be hopeful and still go to bed discouraged. None of these things cancel the deeper truth. The trouble begins when the mind uses temporary evidence to write permanent sentences. I failed today becomes I am a failure. I felt distant becomes I am incapable of closeness. I could not keep up becomes I will never keep up. Those are not careful thoughts. They are fast conclusions made under strain. And strain is not the best narrator. Sometimes the healthiest sentence is also the simplest one. Not I am a mess. Just, today was messy. Not I am losing myself. Just, this day felt hard to carry. Not I am incapable. Just, I did not have much left in me. Notice how much softer that is. Notice how much truer it may be. Language shapes emotional weight. The way you speak to yourself can either tighten the knot or loosen it. When you turn every hard moment into a statement about your worth, the day becomes heavier than it already was. But when you describe the experience without attacking the person living through it, something inside can relax. That relaxation does not solve everything, but it stops the unnecessary harm. There is no wisdom in speaking to yourself more cruelly than reality requires. You do not become stronger by turning ordinary human difficulty into a reason to reject yourself. You do not become clearer by making harshness sound honest. Sometimes what sounds brutally honest is simply distorted by exhaustion and disappointment. Honesty can be quiet. It can say, I am tired. I am discouraged. I did not like how today felt. I need rest. I need a little distance from the way I am judging myself right now. That kind of honesty leaves room for tomorrow. The mirror at night can be a strange place. Some people look into it and only see what they failed to be that day. But the mirror does not know your full story. It only reflects the face of someone who has lived through many things, including this one difficult day. And that matters, because you are always more than the latest version of yourself that appeared under pressure. You are more than your worst hour, more than your lowest energy, more than your most uncertain thought before sleep. A heavy day may tell you many things. It may tell you where you are tired. It may tell you what hurts. It may show you what needs care. But it does not get to define your whole identity. That authority belongs to something deeper, slower, and more complete than one difficult stretch of time. So tonight, let the sentence stay small and true. You had a hard day. That is real. But it is not the same as saying that you are a hard person to be. It is not the same as saying that your life cannot shift. It is not the same as saying that tomorrow must feel like this. Today is a page. It is not your name. Before sleep, many people stand in front of a mirror for a moment without really meaning to. They wash their face. They brush their teeth. They look up for 1 second, and something in their expression seems older than it did in the morning. Not because life changed completely in a few hours, but because one difficult day can sit on the face like it belongs there forever. This is one of the quiet dangers of exhaustion. A hard day does not only feel unpleasant. It can begin to feel personal. It can start speaking to you as if it is describing who you are, not what you went through. That is a painful confusion. There is a difference between having a difficult day and becoming a broken person. There is a difference between feeling scattered and being incapable. There is a difference between struggling today and being someone who will always struggle. When people are tired, these lines blur. You may think about something that went wrong and feel not only regret, but shame. Not only disappointment, but self-doubt. The mind stops saying, that conversation was hard. It begins saying, there is something wrong with me. It stops saying, I am worn out. It begins saying, I cannot handle life. This is how temporary experiences start borrowing the language of identity. It happens in quiet ways. You forgot something small, and the thought becomes, I am unreliable. You felt emotionally flat, and the thought becomes, I am cold. You needed rest, and the thought becomes, I am weak. You made one mistake, and the thought becomes, I ruin everything. Notice how quickly the mind moves from event to identity. An event belongs to time. Identity feels much harder to escape. That is why it matters to separate them. A hard day is real. A tired mind is real. Emotional overload is real. But none of those automatically become a final description of you. They are conditions. They are states. They are experiences passing through a human being who still has depth beyond this moment. Imagine a person who spent the entire day holding themselves together. They met expectations. They answered questions. They kept their tone steady even when they felt strained. By night, they feel empty and far from their better self. In that state, it is easy to think, maybe this is the real me. Maybe I am just not strong enough. Maybe I am falling behind in ways I cannot fix. But that thought ignores context. Context matters more than shame wants to admit. Sleep matters. Stress matters. Repeated pressure matters. Being needed too often matters. Carrying unspoken sadness matters. Even small losses, constant interruptions, or long periods without emotional ease can change how a person feels inside their own mind. The version of you that appears at the end of a draining day is not the whole of you. It is one version shaped by hunger, fatigue, frustration, and emotional wear. It may be sincere, but it is not complete. This is true for almost everyone. People often judge themselves most severely when they are least resourced. They expect wisdom from a tired brain. They expect tenderness from a stretched nervous system. They expect perfect perspective from a person who has been in survival mode all day. That is too much to ask. A mirror at night can become symbolic. You look at yourself and try to decide what kind of person you are based on the feeling of that exact hour. But identity cannot be measured honestly in a moment of depletion. You are not best understood only through your lowest energy state. You are more than how tonight feels. You are more than the expression on your face after a long day. More than the silence in your chest after disappointment. More than the words you wish you had said differently. More than the motivation you could not find. More than the patience you ran out of. None of this erases responsibility. Some things may need repair. Some choices may need reflection. Some patterns may deserve attention. But responsibility is different from self-condemnation. Self-condemnation says, "This hard moment reveals that I am fundamentally lacking." Honest reflection says, "Today was hard, and I am still learning how to live through hard days well." Those are not the same. One closes the door, the other leaves room. And tonight needs room. Room for the possibility that you are tired, not ruined. Room for the possibility that your struggle is situational, not permanent. Room for the possibility that what feels like personal failure may actually be accumulated strain asking for care. Sometimes people fear that if they stop judging themselves, they will stop growing. But harshness is not the only path to growth. In fact, many people improve more honestly when they are no longer spending all their energy defending themselves from their own inner voice. A gentler interpretation can be more accurate. It can also be more useful. You can say, "I had a hard day," instead of, "I am a hard person to be." You can say, "I felt off," instead of, "I am wrong at the core." You can say, "I did not show up as I hoped," instead of, "I never will." These are not empty word games. They change the shape of your relationship with yourself. They keep pain in its proper place. They stop one day from stealing the language of destiny. At night, this matters deeply. Because sleep is harder when you feel you are lying down next to a verdict. Rest becomes possible again when you remember you are lying down next to a day, not a sentence. A day can be heavy and still end. An identity should not be built from the heaviest hour of the night. So if you see yourself dimly now, through tired eyes and tired thoughts, let one clear idea stay with you. Today was an experience. It was not a definition. Even when the day is over, the body does not always understand that it is safe to let go. You may be under a blanket now, in a quiet room, with nothing urgent left to do. And still, your shoulders feel slightly raised. Your jaw may be tighter than you expected. Your hands may not look tense, but they do not feel fully soft either. Your legs are resting, yet something inside you is still standing. This is part of what a heavy day does. Pressure is not stored only in thoughts. It settles into muscle, breath, posture, and pace. A person can finish the schedule, return home, lie down, and still carry the shape of effort in the body for hours. The mind says the day is done, but the body says I am not sure yet. That is why exhaustion can feel so confusing at night. You want rest, but rest does not happen the moment you decide you deserve it. Sometimes the body arrives later than the clock. Think about how often a person moves through the day without noticing what is happening physically. You lean forward. You tighten your face while reading messages. You hold your breath during stress. You rush between tasks. You stay alert through irritation, disappointment, and pressure. None of this looks dramatic from the outside, but the body notices all of it. By evening, these small reactions can gather into one heavy feeling. Your neck feels thick. Your eyes feel hot. Your chest feels crowded in a way that is hard to explain. You are not in danger, but you do not feel open either. Your body has spent the day preparing, bracing, adjusting, and pushing through. It has not yet learned that the pushing is finished. Many people blame themselves for this. They lie down and think, why can I not relax? But relaxation is not a switch. It is often a process of unwinding from states you did not even realize you were holding. A long day can teach the body to stay ready. Ready for another message. Ready for another problem. Ready for another emotional turn. Ready to continue managing more than feels comfortable. So even in silence, the body remains slightly watchful. This does not mean anything is wrong with you. It means your body has memory. It remembers the rushed morning. It remembers the conversation that made your stomach feel small. It remembers the responsibility you carried without complaint. It remembers the moment you had to keep your face calm while something inside you dropped. The body is honest this way. It records what the day required. Sometimes that recording shows up as tightness. Sometimes it looks like heaviness in the limbs. Sometimes it becomes a strange tiredness where you are both sleepy and unable to settle. Sometimes it feels like your thoughts are quiet enough, but your chest still has not received the message. This is why emotional pain and physical fatigue often sit beside each other at night. One lives in words, and one lives in sensation. One says, today was a lot. The other says, I am still carrying it. A person may not cry. They may not speak about the day. They may not even know what they feel emotionally. And yet the body will still tell the truth. It will show the cost in posture, energy, tension, and the slow way the system tries to come down after too much demand. There is something important in knowing this. It helps you stop interpreting every heavy sensation as failure. Tight shoulders do not mean weakness. A tired face does not mean you are losing yourself. A racing heart in the dark does not always mean something terrible is coming. Often it means the body is late to safety. And safety cannot be forced. It is invited. Sometimes the invitation is simple. A slower exhale. A less guarded jaw. Letting your tongue rest. Feeling the weight of the mattress under your back. Not fixing anything. Just noticing that something is supporting you now. These are small things, but the body understands small things better than dramatic speeches. It learns through repetition, through contact, through evidence. A soft pillow, a warm room, a quieter pace, fewer demands, darkness without threat, stillness without pressure to perform. The body does not need perfect peace tonight. It only needs enough signs that the emergency of the day is no longer happening. Even that can take time. You may notice one part of yourself loosening while another part stays guarded. That is normal. The body does not always release all at once. One breath softens the chest. A few minutes later, the forehead unclenches. Later still, the stomach stops holding so firmly. Rest often arrives in layers. So if you feel heavy now, consider that the weight may not all belong to your thoughts. Some of it may belong to muscles that worked through silent stress. Some of it may belong to nerves that stayed too alert for too long. Some of it may belong to a body that did its best to keep you functioning through a full and difficult day. That deserves respect. Your body carried you here. Even in moments when your mind felt tired, your body kept going. It stood up, sat down, walked, lifted, held, waited, reacted, and endured. It may not have done all of that gracefully, but it did it faithfully. And now it is trying to come back from all of that effort. So tonight, perhaps the gentlest truth is this. You are not only emotionally tired, you are physically holding the shape of the day. And little by little, in the quiet, that shape can soften. Many people think a heavy life must come from one big event. They imagine breakdown as something dramatic, a loss that changes everything at once, a crisis with a clear shape, a moment everyone would recognize as serious. But for many people, the real weight builds differently. It gathers quietly, a small disappointment in the morning, a plan that does not work by noon, a message that stays unanswered, a responsibility that returns before the last one is finished, a room that stays messy because there was no strength left to restore it, a cup of tea that turns cold because life interrupted even that simple pause. None of these things sound large by themselves. That is why they are easy to dismiss. You tell yourself it is nothing. It is only one delayed reply, only one extra bill, only one more task, only one more misunderstanding, only one more thing to carry until tomorrow. But the heart does not always measure life by the size of each piece. Sometimes it measures by the number of pieces that never stopped arriving. That is how pressure accumulates. A person can look calm while quietly collecting frustration all day, not because they are pretending, but because there is often no time to fully feel each small letdown as it happens. You keep moving. You keep responding. You tell yourself you will deal with it later. And then later comes, and you realize the day left a pile inside you. This kind of heaviness is often invisible because it does not come with one clean explanation. If someone asked what is wrong, you might not know where to begin. It is not only work, not only money, not only family, not only loneliness, not only fatigue. It is the strange combination of too many little drains with too little time to recover from any of them. Imagine a kitchen table at the end of the night, an unpaid bill, a note you meant to answer, a form you forgot to finish, a half-made plan, a cup left where you last sat down. The table looks ordinary, but it tells the truth. Life has been happening in unfinished pieces. Many people are living like that internally. Their emotional world begins to resemble that table. A concern here, a regret there, a task still open, a conversation unresolved, a hope delayed. Nothing huge enough to justify collapse, but enough together to make the spirit feel crowded. This matters because people often become unfair with themselves when the pain is made of small things. They think, why am I this tired when nothing terrible happened? But exhaustion does not require one terrible event. Repetition can drain a person just as deeply as shock. Small burdens repeated many times become their own kind of storm. A person who must keep adjusting, adapting, waiting, explaining, and holding things together can become quietly worn down even if there was never one single disaster. That does not make their fatigue less valid. It makes it more difficult to name. An unnamed heaviness can feel especially lonely. If there were one dramatic reason, maybe you could point to it and say, "This is why I am struggling." But when the weight comes from 100 ordinary disappointments, it can make you question your own response. You start wondering whether you are too sensitive, too slow, too affected by normal life. But maybe your system is simply full. Maybe your heart has been receiving more impact than you realized. Not one blow, but many small contacts. Many small moments where hope dipped a little. Many tiny efforts that asked for patience when patience was already low. Many practical things that kept demanding energy from a person who had very little left to spare. That kind of accumulation changes the emotional atmosphere of a day. You begin the morning already somewhat tired. Then a few things go wrong. Then you swallow irritation. Then you postpone your own needs. Then one more inconvenience arrives. Then night comes, and all those little moments gather together into one feeling you cannot easily explain. It feels heavier than the day should have been. But maybe the day was not heavy because of one event. Maybe it was heavy because nothing let up. That is a different kind of truth, and it deserves just as much compassion. Some lives are not crushed by tragedy. They are slowly pressed by constant friction. The repeated effort of staying functional. The repeated choice to be responsible. The repeated act of continuing without enough space to reset. This can wear a person down in ways that do not look dramatic from the outside. Still, the inside feels it. Tonight, if your heart feels crowded, it may not be because you are weak. It may be because too many small things entered without ever fully leaving. The disappointment stayed. The pressures stacked. The unfinished parts lingered. The ordinary strain of being alive in a demanding world kept collecting its quiet cost. So do not rush to dismiss your tiredness just because you cannot point to one giant cause. A room can become cold 1 degree at a time. A spirit can become heavy the same way. And sometimes healing begins not by finding one grand answer, but by admitting that many small weights have been sitting on you for longer than anyone could see. When people feel worn down, they often place too much pressure on tomorrow. Not always in obvious ways. Sometimes it happens quietly. A part of the mind begins to say that tomorrow must be better in a clear and satisfying way. It must feel fresh. It must solve something. It must bring energy back, restore direction, or prove that this heavy feeling was only temporary. That sounds hopeful on the surface, but it can become another burden. Because when tomorrow is asked to become perfect, even gentle hope starts turning into pressure. The new day stops being a place to continue life. It becomes a test, a measurement, a chance to see whether you are finally okay. That is too much to ask from a morning. Tomorrow does not need to arrive like a grand answer. It does not need to fix your whole emotional weather before breakfast. It does not need to erase the strain of today in order to be meaningful. Sometimes a better day begins in much smaller ways. A slightly quieter mind, a little more steadiness in the body, one less sharp thought, a task that feels possible instead of overwhelming, a moment where the heart is not quite as crowded. These things may seem modest, but they matter. Real improvement often enters softly. It does not always announce itself. It may not feel like inspiration. It may simply feel like a little more room inside the same life. There is a kind of mercy in lowering the demand you place on the future. If today felt heavy, then perhaps tomorrow only needs to feel a little less heavy. Not easy, not magical, just less loaded, a little more breathable, a little less tangled, a little kinder in one corner. That is enough to matter. Think of the curtains in a dark room before sunrise. The night is still present. The room is still dim. Nothing dramatic has happened yet. And still, on the other side of the fabric, light is gathering. Not loudly, not all at once, but steadily. Tomorrow can be like that. Not a full transformation at once, but the beginning of a shift you can barely see at first. This matters because tired people often reject small hope. They think it is not enough. They think that unless life changes clearly, nothing has changed at all. But that is not how many real recoveries begin. Many recoveries begin in partial ways. You wake up and the problem is still there, but your chest feels less tight. You still have responsibilities, but your mind is not fighting all of them at once. You still feel uncertain, but not swallowed by uncertainty. You still feel tired, but not defeated by the tiredness. These are not dramatic victories, yet they change the day. A person who expects too much from tomorrow may miss the quiet good it actually offers. They keep waiting for a complete emotional reset, and because of that, they overlook the smaller forms of relief that were already arriving. One kind conversation, one simple hour, one moment of clear thought, one task completed without inner resistance, one ordinary sign that life can move again. Hope does not always come in bright colors. Sometimes it comes in softer pressure. Sometimes it comes in not dreading the next step quite as much. Sometimes it comes in being able to begin. That is why tonight can hold a more grounded kind of expectation. Not the demand that tomorrow must become beautiful, but the permission for tomorrow to become different in small and honest ways. Different is enough. A morning can be different even if nothing is solved. A day can be different even if the same people, the same house, the same job, and the same unanswered questions are still present. What changes first is not always circumstance. Sometimes it is the amount of weight you are carrying into the next hour. That weight can shift. Sleep can help it shift. Time can help it shift. Distance from the hardest part of today can help it shift. Even one quiet night can loosen what felt impossible a few hours earlier. And if tomorrow still feels hard, that does not erase the value of this thought. The point is not to guarantee ease. The point is to stop demanding perfection from the future before it even arrives. There is something deeply calming in this. You do not need to meet tomorrow with a performance. You do not need to wake up as a new person. You do not need to prove your resilience by feeling inspired. You only need to meet the next day as a human being who may have a little more space than they have right now. That space may be enough for one clear decision, one softer reaction, one simple meal, one honest conversation, one less painful hour. And sometimes that is exactly how life begins to turn. Not with a dramatic breakthrough, but with a small reduction in weight that makes movement possible again. So let tomorrow stay modest for now. Let it be a day that does not need to impress you. Let it be a day that only needs to open one window. Let it be a day that feels 1 degree lighter than this one. That is not a small thing. That is how hope becomes livable. As the room becomes quieter, something important begins to happen, even if you do not notice it right away. Sleep is not only the absence of activity. It is not just a pause between one day and the next. It is one of the ways the mind and body slowly return from strain. A person may feel unchanged while lying in the dark, yet deep inside, the system is already preparing to loosen what felt too heavy a few hours earlier. This is easy to underestimate. Many tired people treat sleep as something passive, almost unimportant. They think real progress only happens while doing, solving, planning, improving, fixing, or pushing forward. But rest does work too. Quiet work, hidden work, the kind that does not ask for performance before it begins. When you sleep, the sharpness of emotional pain often changes. Not always completely, not always in one night, but enough to matter. A thought that felt overwhelming before bed can lose some of its edge by morning. A disappointment that seemed to fill the whole mind can begin to return to its proper size. The heart may not wake up cheerful, but it may wake up less crowded. That smaller burden is not imaginary. It is part of what rest can do. During the day, emotions gather while life keeps moving. There is little time to sort, settle, or recover. But sleep gives the brain a different kind of space. It stops taking in new demands. It no longer has to answer every sound, message, obligation, and emotional signal at once. It begins shifting from survival into restoration. That shift matters more than many people realize. You do not need to understand every biological detail to feel the truth of it. Most people already know it in experience. They have gone to bed burdened by something and woken up still concerned, but not as overwhelmed. They have ended one day convinced that everything was collapsing and met the next morning with a little more balance. That balance did not come from forcing better thoughts in the night. It came because the system had a chance to reset. Even the body participates in this change. Breathing slows. Muscles release in layers. The nervous system begins stepping down from constant alertness. The mind, which spent the day reacting, no longer has to stay at the same level of readiness. Little by little, the whole person is invited into a lower state of demand. This is why sleep is not a sign of giving up. It is support. It is care that happens without noise. It is one of the ways life helps a tired person keep going. There are nights when people resist this. They stay mentally active, not because they want to, but because they feel they must finish thinking first. They keep trying to reach the perfect conclusion before rest begins. They treat sleep as something they have to earn by understanding everything. But the mind often heals better in rest than in late-night overwork. You do not have to complete every emotional sentence before closing your eyes. You do not have to untangle every worry to deserve sleep. In many cases, rest is not the reward for solving pain. Rest is part of how pain becomes more bearable. That changes the feeling of the night. Instead of seeing sleep as escape, you can see it as cooperation. Your body and mind are not abandoning your life while you rest. They are helping you carry it differently. They are taking some of the pressure out of the system so that tomorrow does not begin at the exact same level of strain. Even a small reduction matters. Imagine a room full of sharp corners. In the dark, every corner feels dangerous because you cannot see clearly. But when morning comes, the same room may not have changed. What changed is your ability to move inside it with more calm and better perspective. Sleep often does something like that for the inner world. The issue may still be present. The task may still wait. The uncertainty may still exist. But the emotional force attached to it is sometimes lower. What felt crushing becomes difficult. What felt impossible becomes unpleasant. What felt like the end becomes something you can look at with more steadiness. That is not dramatic, but it is real. And it is one reason tonight does not need to be controlled so tightly. Your only job is not to think better. Your only job is not to create the perfect mindset. Your only job is not to manufacture hope from exhaustion. Part of the work can happen while you sleep. That should bring some relief. Because tired people often believe everything depends on what they do in this exact moment. But some repair begins when you stop trying so hard to manage every part of your inner state. Some repair begins when the mind is no longer carrying the full weight of attention. This does not mean every morning feels good. Some burdens last. Some nights are restless. Some seasons are heavy in ways that one's sleep cannot fully undo. That is true. But even then, rest is not meaningless. It still gives what it can. It still softens some edges. It still supports the body. It still tells the nervous system that nonstop effort is not the only mode available. And when a person has been living in constant demand, that message is powerful. So as this night continues, there is no need to force trust in some bright future. A simpler trust is enough. You can trust that rest has value even before you feel the result. You can trust that sleep is not empty time. You can trust that quiet hours do more than pass. Somewhere beneath your awareness, the weight is already being handled in smaller pieces. The breathing grows slower. The edges become less sharp. The system begins to come back from the day. And by morning, what feels heavy now may no longer press on you in quite the same way. There are things still open tonight. A task not finished. A message not answered. A decision not made. A feeling not understood. The desk may still hold papers you meant to return to. A notebook may still be open to a page you could not complete. Somewhere in your life, something is waiting. This is often where the mind becomes restless before sleep. It is not like unfinished things. It wants a clean ending. It wants closure before darkness deepens. It wants every loose thread tied, every tension explained, every uncertainty pushed into some clear shape. And when that does not happen, the mind can start acting as if sleep itself must wait. But peace does not always come from finishing. Sometimes it comes from stopping. There is a difference between responsible attention and endless mental holding. Responsible attention says, "This matters, and I will return to it when I can meet it properly." Endless mental holding says, "I must keep gripping this even when I have no strength left to do anything useful with it." One of these protects tomorrow. The other steals the night. Many people do not realize how often they carry unfinished things as if constant pressure were a form of care. They keep thinking about the task because they do not want to forget. They keep replaying the conversation because they want to be fair. They keep circling the decision because they want to get it right. Their intention is understandable. But by bedtime, this effort is often no longer helping. It is only keeping the nervous system tied to what cannot be solved right now. Imagine a desk in a quiet room. A lamp is off. A page is half written. A cup sits beside it. Nothing on that desk is moving, yet the mind can keep returning there as if something urgent is still happening. It does not want the work to remain incomplete. It does not want the uncertainty to stay alive overnight. But life is full of things that must stay unfinished for a while. Some problems need more time than one day can provide. Some answers are not available at night. Some emotions must settle before they become understandable. Some decisions become clearer only after distance. This is not failure. It is part of being human inside time. There is quiet wisdom in letting a thing remain open without turning it into a threat. Not every unfinished part of life is an emergency. Not every unanswered question must be solved before your body is allowed to lie still. Not every loose end deserves a full share of your remaining energy. Tonight may ask a different kind of strength from you. Not the strength to complete everything. The strength to leave something unfinished without calling yourself irresponsible. This can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are someone who values order, clarity, care, or follow-through. Leaving things open can feel like negligence. But there is a difference between neglect and limitation. Neglect does not care. Limitation simply admits that today has ended before everything could be resolved. That admission can be kind. You may have done enough for one day. Not everything waiting for you is meant to be carried into bed. The message can wait until tomorrow. The paper can remain where it is. The answer can stay unknown for one more night. Even the deeper emotional questions do not all need to become clear before sleep. You do not have to fully understand why you felt off. You do not have to name every sadness. You do not have to explain your heaviness in perfect words in order to deserve rest. Sometimes the most healing act is to stop demanding closure from the night. The night is not a courtroom. It does not need final statements from every unfinished part of your life. It is a place where some things are allowed to stay incomplete while your system recovers. That can be hard to trust. The mind may say, if I let go, everything will fall apart. But often the opposite is true. When you loosen your grip, you preserve the energy needed to return tomorrow with more steadiness. Holding everything all night does not make you more prepared. It only makes you more depleted. And depleted people struggle more, not less. So perhaps the gentlest thought for this part of the night is this. You are allowed to leave some things where they are. You are allowed to let the notebook stay open. You are allowed to let the desk remain untouched. You are allowed to let tomorrow receive what tonight cannot carry well. This is not avoidance. It is pacing. It is the wisdom of saying, I will not do my worst thinking in the final hours of the day and call it discipline. It is the wisdom of giving unfinished things a boundary. They still matter. They are simply not in charge of this hour. Maybe that boundary is invisible. Maybe it is only a sentence in your own mind. I see this. I am not ignoring it. I am also not solving it right now. That sentence is small, but it changes the tone of the night. It replaces panic with sequence. It reminds the heart that time still exists, and not everything must happen in one exhausted stretch of consciousness. You can care about something and still put it down for now. You can be responsible and still sleep before everything is done. You can be sincere and still admit that your mind is too tired to continue holding every thread. That is not weakness. That is how peace sometimes begins. Not in the completion of all things, but in the humble decision to let some things remain unfinished until morning. Morning often returns in ordinary clothes. Not with music, not with a dramatic sense of renewal, not with a sudden answer to everything that felt heavy the night before. It usually arrives in small, familiar ways. A dim room slowly brightening. A first step toward the kitchen. The sound of water running. A hand reaching for a glass. The quiet beginning of another regular day. This is important to remember because many people imagine a better tomorrow too dramatically. They think change must feel powerful to be real. They think starting again must come with strong emotion, clear motivation, or a visible sense of progress. But much of life heals in quieter ways than that. A person can begin again without feeling inspired. A person can rise without feeling ready. A person can continue without having solved everything. There is dignity in that. Imagine someone standing in the kitchen after a heavy day and a long night. The sunlight is plain. The room is not transformed. Their life is still their life. The same responsibilities may still be waiting. The same uncertainties may still exist. And yet something subtle is different. They are here. They got up. They are standing inside another chance to move through the day. This may sound simple, but it is not small. When the heart has felt burdened, beginning again is its own quiet strength. Not because it looks impressive, but because it asks for willingness without requiring perfection. The world often praises dramatic turning points. Big decisions, big energy, big breakthroughs. But ordinary resilience rarely looks like that. Often it looks like getting out of bed when the mind is still somewhat tired, washing your face when the future is still unclear, drinking water before you feel emotionally ready, answering the next hour without certainty. This kind of beginning matters because it does not wait for ideal conditions. It does not say, "I will start when I feel completely restored." It says, "I will meet this morning as I am." That is enough. A quiet restart is not lesser than a dramatic one. In many lives, it is the form that real endurance takes. You do not need a transformed personality to begin again. You do not need perfect confidence. You do not need a full explanation for yesterday. Sometimes you only need enough steadiness to take the next simple action. Open the curtain. Stand up. Pour the water. Put both feet on the floor. These actions are small, but they change your relationship with heaviness. They remind the body that stillness has ended and movement is possible. They remind the mind that this day is not identical to the last one simply because some of the same problems remain. The day is new, even if life is familiar. There is comfort in that plainness. A lot of suffering comes from thinking change must be dramatic to count. But consider how often real life moves by modest shifts. One better hour. One simpler choice. One conversation approached more gently. One task done without the same weight as yesterday. These are not flashy forms of progress, yet they are often the ones that keep a person going. The morning kitchen becomes a kind of symbol here. Nothing extraordinary is happening. No speech. No revelation. Just ordinary light, ordinary objects, ordinary movement. And still, this is where many people quietly begin carrying themselves back into life. Not with force, but with repetition. Not with intensity, but with presence. A heavy night can make you forget that ordinary beginnings have power. But they do. The first glass of water can be a form of care. The first open curtain can be a form of permission. The first step across the room can be a form of belief. Not belief that everything will suddenly be easy, but belief that the day can still be lived. That matters, especially for people who feel disappointed in themselves for not waking up full of energy. You do not need to. The morning is not asking you to become radiant. It is only asking whether you can start in a small and honest way. And many people can. Even burdened people can. Even uncertain people can. Even those who slept with a heavy heart can still stand in a new day and move one step forward. That is the quiet strength of beginning again. It does not make noise. It does not ask for applause. It simply appears in ordinary actions that say, I am here, and I will continue. So if tomorrow arrives gently, let it arrive that way. Let the beginning be plain. Let the light enter without pressure. Let the first hour be simple. A calm restart is still a restart. And sometimes the most meaningful form of hope is not a dramatic new life. It is an ordinary morning that finds you willing to begin once more. Hope is often hidden inside ordinary routine. Many people wait for hope to arrive as a feeling. They expect it to come through motivation, inspiration, or some clear emotional signal that things are improving. But in daily life, hope often enters more quietly than that. It can live inside repeated actions that seem too small to matter. Brushing your teeth, opening a window, putting on clean clothes, making the bed, even loosely, heating water, packing a bag, stepping into the same hallway with a slightly different heart. These actions can look mechanical from the outside, but they do something important inside a person. They give shape to a day. They create sequence. They return the body to movement and the mind to rhythm. And when life feels emotionally uncertain, rhythm can be more stabilizing than inspiration. That is why routine matters so much after heavy days. When you do not know how to feel better, small actions can carry you until your feelings catch up. They reduce the number of decisions the mind must make. They offer familiar ground when the inner world feels less steady. They say, you do not need to solve your life right now. Just continue with this next simple thing. There is mercy in that. A person who wakes up burdened may not have enough strength for grand plans, but they may have enough for one repeated gesture, then another, then one more. Not because routine is magical, but because it lowers resistance. It helps life move when emotion is not ready to lead. Think about the difference between waiting for hope and practicing a structure that can hold you before hope becomes visible. One keeps you passive, searching for a feeling. The other gives you something to stand inside. A toothbrush in your hand, morning air at the window, the sound of fabric as you get dressed. These are small forms of contact with the day, and contact matters. It is easy to underestimate routine because it seems ordinary. But what looks ordinary is often what prevents collapse. Repeated actions tell the nervous system that life still has order. They reassure the mind that not everything has dissolved into confusion. They create a gentle path forward when the larger road still feels unclear. This is especially true after emotional heaviness. A tired person may not trust their thoughts. Their feelings may change hour by hour. Motivation may be weak, but routine asks less from them. It does not require emotional certainty. It only asks for participation. A simple act done again. A simple act done today because it was done yesterday. A small structure that continues to exist even when your inner world is not fully settled. That continuity can feel like relief. A person opens a window and cool air enters the room. They pull on a sweater. They put something in the sink. They look outside for 1 second before turning back to the day. None of this solves deeper problems, but it does something quieter. It keeps the person connected to life. It prevents total drift. It gives shape to hours that might otherwise become swallowed by heaviness. This is one reason routines can carry hidden hope. They are proof that life can still be entered one step at a time. They do not demand a great mood. They do not require strong confidence. They simply offer the next place to stand. And standing somewhere specific is easier than floating in everything at once. Of course, Routines can become rushed or empty too. That happens. But even then, they still offer an opening. You can brush your teeth while paying attention to the simple fact that the day has begun. You can open the curtain and let yourself notice that light is reaching the room. You can put on clothes and recognize that you are preparing to meet the world, even if only in a modest way. These things are not grand, but they are grounding. Grounding is often more useful than excitement. A life does not become livable only through dramatic emotional breakthroughs. It also becomes livable through repeatable patterns that lower chaos and gently return a person to themselves. Routine is one of those patterns. So if tomorrow feels plain, do not dismiss it. Plain days can still carry healing. Ordinary actions can still contain care. The familiar sequence of morning can still hold you more gently than you expect. Hope is not always a bright feeling waiting in the distance. Sometimes it is your hand on the window. Sometimes it is your shirt pulled over tired shoulders. Sometimes it is the simple fact that you are moving through the day in an order your body recognizes. That order can be a kindness. That kindness can become steadiness. And steadiness, over time, becomes one of the quiet places where hope learns to stay. Some changes begin long before they can be felt. This can be frustrating for tired people. They want honest evidence. They want to know that the effort, the waiting, the quiet nights, and the small attempts to keep going are leading somewhere real. When that evidence is not obvious, doubt begins speaking. It says nothing is happening. It says you are still the same. It says the heaviness proves that no progress exists. But visible feeling is not the only measure of change. There are kinds of growth that happen in hidden places. A seed under soil does not look like progress from above. A house before dawn does not look transformed. A person resting after a difficult season may not appear different from the outside. And yet important processes can already be underway. Softening, rebuilding, reordering. Recovering strength in forms too quiet to display themselves quickly. Human beings often misread this stage. Because you still feel heavy, you assume nothing is shifting. Because clarity has not arrived, you assume confusion is winning. Because you are not yet strong in the way you imagined, you assume weakness remains the only truth. But inner change is rarely so immediate. Sometimes the first sign of healing is not joy. It is less panic. Sometimes the first sign of growth is not confidence. It is less self-attack. Sometimes the first sign of renewed life is not energy. It is simply not feeling as trapped as before. These early shifts can be easy to miss because they do not look dramatic enough. They do not satisfy the part of the mind that wants visible proof. But they matter. In fact, they often matter more than louder emotional moments because they are part of a deeper change in how a person is carrying themselves. Imagine standing in a quiet house before sunrise. The rooms look the same. The furniture has not moved. The walls are still dim. If you judged only by what your eyes could clearly see, you might say nothing has changed. But outside, the sky is already moving toward light. The change exists before it becomes obvious. Inner life can be like that. You may still feel unsure and yet be less fragile than you were. You may still feel tired and yet be rebuilding endurance. You may still feel sad and yet be learning how not to drown in sadness. You may still have hard nights, and yet be becoming more able to meet them without turning them into final conclusions. These are real forms of change. They do not always announce themselves, but they alter the future. That is why patience matters so much in quiet seasons. Not passive patience that gives up, but steady patience that allows unseen work to continue without demanding constant proof. Some parts of you need time more than evaluation. Some parts heal better when not watched too closely. This can feel difficult in a world that values visible results. People want timelines. They want evidence. They want before and after. They want something clear to point to. But not everything true can be measured quickly. Not everything meaningful becomes visible on command. Sometimes you are becoming stronger in the dark. Sometimes you are building tolerance for life in ways that only reveal themselves later. Sometimes you are learning trust not through sudden peace, but through repeated nights where you rest anyway. That matters. A person who keeps showing up to ordinary life while carrying heaviness is not doing nothing. A person who continues with small care, small rhythm, small honesty, and small rest is not standing still. Their movement may be invisible, but invisibility is not absence. This is one of the gentlest truths to carry into sleep. You do not need full evidence tonight. You do not need to feel transformed in order for transformation to be quietly beginning. You do not need a bright emotional sign to believe that something inside you may be shifting towards steadiness. Trusting this does not mean pretending everything is fine. It means allowing that reality may be kinder and more gradual than your fear suggests. You are allowed to be in the middle of something not yet visible. You are allowed to be growing in ways that have not reached the surface. You are allowed to be changing before your feelings can confirm it. This kind of trust is quiet. It does not insist. It does not exaggerate. It simply says that hidden movement is still movement. And for many tired hearts, that is enough to keep a small light alive until morning. Now the night is very still. The room is quiet in the way only late hours can be. The blanket has settled. The air feels softer. Nothing more is required from this day. No final performance. No last explanation. No pressure to turn heaviness into wisdom before sleep. This day was heavy. That is true. It may have asked too much from you. It may have moved too fast, pressed too long, or left too many things unfinished. It may have filled your body with tension and your mind with more weight than words can easily hold. But even a day like this is allowed to end. That matters more than it seems. Because when a day feels difficult, part of the mind begins acting as if it should continue forever. It starts speaking in permanent language. It says this is your life now. It says this feeling tells the future. It says one heavy day must surely become the shape of everything that comes next. But the night answers differently. The night says this day can close. The night says what was hard can be placed down for now. The night says not every burden must be carried across the border into tomorrow. There is peace in that image. A day standing behind you like a closed door. Not erased, not denied, simply finished. And ahead, not a miracle, not a promise that everything will suddenly become easy, but a new page waiting quietly. A plain morning, a little light through the window, a first ordinary step, a life that can still continue without needing to become perfect overnight. Tomorrow can arrive like that, softly, without announcement, without demanding that you become someone else. Sometimes that is enough to trust. You do not need to sleep with grand hope tonight. A smaller hope is more than enough. The hope that the heart may feel a little less crowded. The hope that the body may loosen its grip. The hope that morning may be ordinary but not unbearable. The hope that one new hour can begin without carrying the full pressure of the last one. That hope is quiet. It does not try to impress you. It only stays near. Maybe that is what makes it believable. You are here now, at the edge of sleep, with all the softness and uncertainty that comes with ending a difficult day. There is nothing heroic required in this moment. Only rest. Only the humble permission to stop. Let the bed hold what your muscles have been carrying. Let the darkness keep what your mind no longer needs to examine tonight. Let the silence surround what cannot yet be solved. And let this one truth remain simple. Today was heavy, but it is allowed to end. And tomorrow, even if it begins very quietly, can still be different.